Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making time to join us. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the CEO for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar series. Very excited that we're helping to prepare all learners to be digital equity champions. And before I hand this over to our folks here, our presenters, I just want to make a few comments. One is that I know we'll see in the chat box from folks, will the recording be available? Yes, we are recording this and we'll make this available. Will you receive a certificate of participation? Yes, you'll receive a certificate of participation. Also, with regard to the pre-conference that will take place at the COABE conference, you can still sign up for that. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. And you see here, register for the free COABE pre-conference. And we will have some wonderful presentations done as well. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jisoo and our friends at World Ed. And thank you again for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you to COABE and World Ed for being really great collaborators on this important work. You can see some of our other collaborating organizations on this series. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jisoo Song, and I serve as the Digital Equity Advisor for the Office of Educational Technology at the U.S. Department of Education, where my role is to engage in collaborations across the federal government and with experts in the field, like our panelists here, to help maximize the impact of various policies and programs that aim to advance digital equity for our learners. So our agenda for today, I'll begin with some welcome and housekeeping. World Ed will give some overview of the Digital Equity Act, and they'll also lead the panel discussion, and we'll discuss next steps at the very end. But I just want to get a quick sense of who's in the room with us. You should see a quick poll on your screen shortly. So when it pops up, we'd love to get to know who's in the room. Let us know if you're an adult education provider, state adult education office, workforce development, others. Let's take a moment just to indicate who you are. Oh, here we go. All right, while we wait on those results, a couple of housekeeping rules. Please use the Q&A function to ask your questions so that we don't lose them in the chat. We had over like 1,100 registrants for this webinar, so we don't want to lose your questions in the chat. So use the Q&A function if you have any questions. And when you ask a question, if you could just note which speaker you're directing the question to, or if it's more of a general question, that would really help in making sure that your questions do get answered. As Sharon mentioned, we'll also be sharing the recording of the slides within a day or two after the presentation, so you'll be able to get access to that if you're not able to stay on for the entire hour. I'll pass it to my colleagues at World Ed for a couple of few additional notes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Shirley Dunn at World Education. So before we begin, I'm going to drop a link in the chat. So for those of you who attended the first webinar in January, please take a few minutes to find your guided notes worksheet, or you can download a fresh copy using the link I just put in the chat. And I will do that again one more time because the chat is moving super fast. So as with last time, we will be covering a lot of content during this session, and we hope that this worksheet will be helpful to you as you begin planning for the Digital Equity Competitive Grant. And just as a brief overview, so on the first page, you'll see questions focused on eligibility for the competitive grant. And then on the second page, you'll see space to take notes on partnerships, key takeaways, inspiring ideas, and next steps, as well as a space to jot down your own moonshot ideas. And thank you for taking a few minutes to respond to the poll. I was not able to see the results, but thank you all for being here, and you can continue putting that information in the chat. I'm going to pass it back to Jisoo now to provide a quick review of the Digital Equity Act.
Thanks, Shirley. So before Shirley talks about various opportunities on the horizon and Catalina leads a panel discussion, I want to very briefly provide some context and an overview of the why behind today's webinar. And this might be a bit of a review if you attended webinar 1 last month. You might have heard that the bipartisan infrastructure law included $65 billion total in broadband investments. That funding included Digital Equity Act programs administered by my awesome colleagues over at the NTIA, the first part of which funded the development of state digital equity plans, and states are at the tail end of that process. The second part, the capacity grants, which I believe my colleagues at NTIA should announce soon, will fund the implementation of those plans. And then we have the third part, the competitive grants that will allow eligible entities to pursue different digital equity projects. I know Shirley's going to talk about them in a little bit, but OET has been trying to communicate that it's really critical for the education sector, including the adult education sector, to get involved with this opportunity. And a couple of other things to level set. I know many of you know this already if you've been involved in this space, but just to develop a common understanding of some key concepts, according to the bipartisan infrastructure law, digital equity is achieved when all individuals and communities have the informational technology capacity that's needed for full participation in the society and the economy of the US. It's ultimately what we're trying to get to. And then we have digital inclusion. I really like the way that NTIA frames this term, digital equity being the what we're trying to do, and digital inclusion being the how, or the components that are necessary to meet that goal, from reliable and fixed wireless broadband to internet-enabled devices, applications and online content, digital literacy, technical support, and online privacy and cybersecurity as well. Why is digital equity so important, right? Why are we even talking about this after the pandemic? We know that it sets the conditions that are necessary for educational equity, community health, economic mobility, all these different things that are necessary to unlock opportunity in our communities. So I'm really excited for this discussion ahead of us today. I'll pass the mic back to World Ed to continue the discussion.
Thank you. So a little bit of review for those of you who were on last month's webinar. But just to review, what exactly is the Digital Equity Competitive Grant that we're going to be discussing today? So the purpose of the competitive grant is to support efforts to achieve digital equity, promote digital inclusion activities, and spur greater adoption of broadband among covered populations. And as you saw in the previous slide, digital inclusion spans a variety of activities. The competitive grant is different from the other two grants. First of all, the competitive grant is open to eligible state and non-state entities, and we'll talk about which entities are eligible on a later slide. And second, the funding for this grant program is, as the name implies, competitive funding instead of formula funding, and the funding will last for 4 years. Next slide, please. We still expect the Notice of Funding Opportunity, otherwise known as the NOFO, to come out between summer and September of this year in 2024. That being said, by law, the NOFA does have to come out within 30 days of the first state receiving their capacity grant funding, which is the funding that states will receive to implement their digital equity plans this year. So as an example, if the first state receives their capacity grant funding on April 1st, then the NOFA for the competitive grant has to be released by April 30th. Next slide. So there has been some movement on this front since our last webinar. So in early February, the application materials for the state capacity grant were published. So to be clear, these application materials are not the Notice of Funding Opportunity. They are not the NOFO. It just means that the NOFO is likely to come out very soon. After the NOFO is released, states will have up to 60 days to submit their application. For those of you who are keeping up to date, you may have also heard that Maine became the first state to have their digital equity plan accepted earlier this month on the 15th. So first of all, congratulations to those of you from Maine. But again, to be clear, acceptance of a state digital equity plan by NTIA does not mean that the state has applied or been approved for the state capacity grant funds. All states still have to go through the application process. So to reiterate, we are waiting for the state capacity grant NOFO to come out very soon. Then we're waiting for states to apply. Then we're waiting for states to be approved for funding. And then finally, the countdown for the release of the competitive grant NOFO will begin. And COABE has generously offered to send out an email announcement when the competitive grant NOFO will be out. So you will get that notice if you've signed up for this webinar. Next, okay, thank you. On this slide, you'll see a list of all of the eligible entities who are eligible to apply for the competitive grant. So to point out a few entities of interest: state adult education offices, nonprofits, community anchor institutions, local educational agencies, workforce development programs, and importantly, partnerships between any of the above all qualify to apply. And hopefully that covers the great majority of you on today's call. Something to note is that the office that is leading the digital equity plan implementation in your state, which in most cases is going to be your state's broadband office, they are not eligible to apply for the competitive grant because they're already receiving the capacity grant money. Next slide. And so what activities are allowable under the competitive grant? So broadly speaking, all digital inclusion activities for covered populations, including individuals of a language barrier, so our adult learners, are allowable. The legislation also cites more specific examples, including activities that help people adopt broadband for educational and employment opportunities, digital skills training at all levels, from basic to advanced, equipment to provide low or no cost broadband access, and public access computing centers. The NTIA can also approve other projects and activities as they see fit, but we likely won't know what those are until the NOFO actually comes out. Next slide. So as for the question of how much funding will be available, so again, we know some things that are written in the legislation and the rest is currently up in the air. So on this slide, want to point out that what we know is on the left side, and then our speculation is on the right side. So we know that the legislation does not provide a minimum or maximum award amount. Of the amount that is awarded to grantees, both administrative costs as well as evaluation costs will be capped at 10% each. And the grant may also require a non-federal match of 10%. On the speculative side, so again, what we think is likely to happen, we think NTIA is likely to award large grants, large awards to national, statewide, and regional collaborative efforts. And if this is the case, then a backbone organization could receive the award, be the fiscal administrator, and then redistribute that funding to other partners, including all of the smaller organizations who need a little bit more capacity or other forms of support to do the work. So again, reiterating that the information on the right side is speculation. We're not going to know some major details until the NOFO is released, but either way, we believe that strong partnerships, strong coalitions are going to be critical to being competitive and successful for this grant, as well as innovative models, again, that serve our adult learners. Next slide. So what can you do now to be ready? So NTIA's Digital Equity Director, Angela T. Bennett, was at the Net Inclusion Conference hosted by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance earlier this month. And so I have summarized a little bit of the advice that she offered, which is first, to build your partnerships and collaborate strategically. So if you don't want to take our word for building partnerships, NTIA has said to build your partnerships and collaborate. Number 2, read your state digital equity plan if you haven't already, and connect with the office that is leading the work. The link in the slide, which again is going to be shared after this presentation, will take you to World Education's Digital Equity Act Tracker, where you can find contact information and links to the digital equity plans for every state. Number 3, identify where you can show up and help your state achieve its goals. Number 4, understand your community's needs. And lastly, number 5, putting a big emphasis on this, don't wait. We know that building partnerships takes time, and so for better or for worse, reading your digital equity plan also takes time. So the clock is ticking. Get started now if you haven't already. And if you're interested in this details, I highly recommend watching the video on the right. It is the recording of the live stream from Angela's talk at the conference. So we're going to transition now to our panel discussion, which showcases some truly fantastic examples of strong partnerships and community engagement. And we hope that the panelists will provide you with inspiration to create, replicate, or expand digital inclusion programming that really meets the needs of the adult learners that we collectively serve. And so I'll pass it off to my World Education colleague, Catalina Gonzalez, to kick it off.
Thank you so much, Shirley and Jisoo. And yes, I have the honor to introduce and also have a conversation with our panelists today. As Shirley was mentioning, we are hearing from NTIA that it is critical to build partnerships and to collaborate. And it is likely that the funding is going to support national, statewide, and regional collaborations. So the emphasis here is for us to learn from what our panelists are doing and other models that are happening across the country. So we can start thinking about what other pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, we need to bring together to really create digital equity ecosystems that support our learners across the country. Please use the handnotes, the guided notes handout. You will see that on the first page, there are questions related to the competitive grant eligibility, cover populations, et cetera, et cetera. So if you haven't been involved in this conversation, or this is the first time that you and having this conversation, it guides you to the language that has been used, so you can get more clarity on that. And then on the second page, you will see a space to take notes on partnerships, key takeaways, and also inspiring ideas and next steps. Please post your questions on the Q&A. You'll see the slide right now. So it's next to the participants. If you just hover on the bottom of your screen. And if you are asking a question to a specific panelist, please add the name of that person. Okay, so it's time to introduce our amazing panelist. I am going to introduce Dr. Charles Russell, President of the Diné College in Arizona. Dr. Chris Fanning, Executive Director, Programs and Risk Reduction at the Kansas Department of Corrections. Luis Quiñones, Deputy Vice President of Workforce Development and Adult Education at Unidos. It's an organization with national reach. Markevis Gideon, the founder of Nerdet Cares in Delaware. And Sky Downing, Programs and Partnerships Director at Community Tech Networks in California. We are going to start with Dr. Russo first, who will be talking about Diné College's community-based, culturally responsive, digital inclusion programs across the Navajo Nation. Dr. Russell.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody who are a part of this webinar. Like I said, my name is Charles Russell. I'm the president of Diné College, the first tribal college in the country. And therefore, we have a very unique, when we talk about partnerships, we have a very unique breadth of partnerships here. But our primary focus is to say, how do we try to address the needs of our students? But I think one of the things that we learned in this process, and we received an NTIA grant that really helped us during the pandemic, which allowed us to provide laptop computers to students, provide hotspots for them to be able to access from their home, created Wi-Fi networks at all of our buildings. We have 7 campuses across 3 states, so it's kind of pretty large in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. But I think one of the things that we learned, and that it kind of came about pretty early on, and that is while we're focusing on the students, our 82% of our students, when they graduate, they stay in their community. So if you're going to focus on your students, you really need to focus on the community because they're also going to be there. So I think that's something that we really have grown to know, is thinking about not what our partners are today, but where our partners are for tomorrow and the next day. And I think taking the time to think about that is really important on the front end, because that's something that we're going through right now. What does that mean in terms of how we try to then change and create new partnerships? Well, because of this, we created a new school within Gwinnett College called the School of Transformation. And that is, unlike our academic programs, that is primarily focused on credentialing and looking at ways that we can help the workforce. So our partners there are much more the industries that surround us. Prior to this, we were looking at it very differently. We didn't provide credentialing. And so we had a different type of partnerships with people going forward. They were more interested in our academic programs. But now we've changed that. And so in working with people that are in the industry, we're able now to create programs that are helping to train the workforce through digital and using all of our sites across the reservation. We're talking about 27,000 square miles. So it's a pretty big area, and we have 7 campuses. So how do we try to continue what we learned internally through the NTIA grant, but now expand it to say, okay, our community is really much larger than just our student body. So the other thing I think that we learned very early on is, in the beginning, it was just about, okay, we need broadband, we need to increase, but we didn't take the time to think, what do we want to become? What is it that we want to envision? We now are classified as a online learning institution by the Higher Learning Commission. So now everything that we did a couple of years ago is different now. So we have to be looking at that. And I think that's something that for us, it's been really a challenge. We're in a very remote part of this country. We have a lot of negative impact in terms of socioeconomic, but I think it's something that allows us to move forward. But I think one of the things is we've created partners also with our internet providers, and they as a more larger collective voice. And I think this is something that's important in tribal communities, but also in very rural communities, is that a singular voice sometimes is not heard. So how do you build other people that can come together, that have similar interests, that then can provide? What did this do? We used to spend about $800,000 a year on broadband. By creating partnerships, working with internet providers, working with a coalition, we were able to drop that more than half. So there are things that I think come out of this when you start looking at some of these opportunities that are in front of you, to think about things not just about today, but where you want to be years down the road. I think that really addresses a lot of things that we're looking at. And so I think one of the things that I just want to close is that a lot of this is, we just talk about the broadband, but the other part that's really difficult in rural and tribal communities is the human capacity. That is something that also is very real and that needs to be discussed when you're talking about what you're looking for. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, I love this community is being beyond our student body, and also partnering with those unlikely partners like internet providers. Thank you so much. I'm going now to pass it to, or introduce rather, Dr. Chris Fanning, Executive Director of Programs and Risk Reduction at the Kansas Department of Correction. And she's going to be speaking about tablet and laptop access for incarcerated learners. Dr. Fanning.
Great. Thank you, Catalina, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. You might be wondering where the Department of Corrections plays into digital equity. We are a covered population underneath those digital equity plans. So be thinking about how you might partner with some of your state correctional facilities to help provide much needed services. So what you're going to see as we go on the screen is just some information about what we have here in the state of Kansas in the Department of Corrections. So we have 9 state correctional facilities. 8 of those are adult, and 1 of those is juvenile. We have approximately 9,000 adult residents in our care, and 95% of those residents are going to return to the community. So our goal here in the Department of Corrections is about providing opportunities for residents to re-enter society successfully. This is absolutely essential to public safety, along with reducing the number of victims that we have in our communities. You never know when somebody's going to come out and be your neighbor, and we want to make sure that we are providing them the opportunities and the education in order to be that successful citizen. So when we look at some of the stats, you can go ahead and pull up all of those there. Thank you. So when we look at some of the statistics, when we're talking about individuals who are incarcerated, majority of people do come to us that need basic adult education, sometimes in the form of a GED or high school diploma, and sometimes just I haven't been in school for a long time and I need to refresh some skills in order to move on into a CTE program or a college course. So when we look at some of these, we see that individuals who complete their GED or high school diploma with us are 65% more likely to get employed with a life-sustaining wage. If they complete 1 college course, they're 20% more likely. And if they hold an industry job while incarcerated, they're 25% more likely to be employed once they reenter the community. In all of these individuals are a third less likely to return to our prison system, which is really important. Education has been seen to be one of the primary factors of reducing recidivism. So in thinking about all of this, I want to talk a little bit about our partnerships first, because as the Department of Corrections, we don't do any of this alone. We have a really great partnership with our Department of Commerce. They help us in that workforce development because education and employment go hand in hand. We also have a really great partnership with our Department of Labor. Through the Department of Labor, we do driver's license clinics for individuals. So we have a lot of these really strong partnerships with other state agencies. And then there's also our partnerships with our adult education centers across the state, as well as our community college and university partners. So we're really excited about the opportunities. So you might be asking yourself, how in the heck did you get to having these types of opportunities in a correctional facility? Because when you think about it, if you've never been in one, you might be thinking about what you've seen on TV, and you don't think about people walking around with laptops or tablets or anything of that nature, or even having Wi-Fi access. So when I stepped into my role at the Department of Corrections, it was actually as the Director of Education in June of 2020, so right at the start of the pandemic. So it was actually a little blessing in disguise because the pandemic hit and all of our programs had to shut down. And so we had to think very creatively about how to continue to provide access to education to the individuals that need it, because we know this is what's going to help them not come back to us. So we have a lot of our college partners, our Second Chance Pell. So we worked with all of our partners to kind of brainstorm some ideas. We got our first set of tablets. We partner with APDS, which is now Origin. Got our first set of tablets, 50 tablets through a grant project that we were asked to participate in. And I'm really happy to announce that this spring, we are going to have a 1-to-1 ratio with all of our adult education students. So over 2,000 tablets we're deploying across the state. And we also just rolled out Wi-Fi for all of our residents, which is really unheard of in a lot of states because of those safety and security issues. So I think it's really important, if you're thinking about some of these funding opportunities, remember some of those other covered populations. And I know that I'll be reaching out probably to people to continue to partner with us, but think outside the box for sure. And definitely don't forget those students that might be there in your state correctional facilities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris. I am now going to invite Luis Quiñones, who is the Deputy Vice President of Workforce Development and Adult Education at UNIDOS, and he is going to be speaking about their culturally and linguistically responsive Padres Comprometidos and Digital Skills for Life, a parent engagement program. Luis.
Pleasure to be here. My name is Luis Quiñones, and I work for Unidos US, which is the largest civil rights organization for Latinos in this country. We have a network of around 302 nonprofits that are Latino serving. And basically, these are the individuals who are providing the services to the Latino community in 39 states, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about our journey in digital equity. And so digital equity is one of the pillars of the workforce and adult education department that I lead. It's super important to us. I would say, to kind of like create a context, they are 55% of the Latino workers, which is around 34 million people, lack digital skills. And I think that's super important to understand that when we're talking about community access, equity in Latino communities being able to achieve economic prosperity in this country, digital equity, it's at the foundation. And so back in 2019, we started in the journey of digital equity by creating one program that was called Latinos at Work. And the idea was to teach individuals digital skills contextualized on workforce readiness. And we launched this project 6 months before the pandemic hit. As you all know, the pandemic hit and it really turned everything upside down, but it also kind of like increased the gap of digital equity within the Latino community. And so when we were trying to figure all things out, we started receiving feedback from the Latinos at Work sites that the curriculum that we had created it needed more of a foundation because it was even too advanced, right? We thought we were meeting the need, but we realized once we implemented that we needed foundational, very like 101. So we went ahead and started talking to people in communities in trying to understand, okay, what's out there. And when we were looking what's out there, I did not find any foundational digital skills curriculum in Spanish, right? And so it was a huge need. And then we were like, okay, you know what? We need to create something that is agnostic to service area, that it could be plugged into any project. And that's what gave birth to our Digital Skills for Life, which is a 20-hour foundational course. And you can see the structure over here. What is really nice about it is you go over the content with an instructor, and you can do it in person or you can do it on a virtual setting like this. And then it has what we call R&R, which is recap or review and reinforce. So an ability for the learner to review the content and put it into practice, right? And so when we're dealing with adult learners, making sure that they repeat and put things into practice into their own lives is very important. And so this has been a very successful intervention. It's in Spanish and also in English. By the end of 2024, we would have served 3,000 learners across 36 organizations across the nation. Now, Padres Comprometidos is an intervention that Unidos has under the Department of Education, where basically it's how to engage Latino parents so they understand the education system in the United States, how do they understand the grades, how they understand to advocate for services for their children. And when we were developing Digital Skills for Life, we did focus groups with Latino parents to understand the needs. And basically the idea is now we are incorporating the digital skills for life curriculum as an added tool into Padres Comprometidos. So now parents are able to communicate via email, log in the system to see their kids' grades, their homework. It really empowers them to be more involved in the educational journey of their children. And of course, that will result in better outcomes for the kids. We even have one of our affiliates, El Sol, in Santa Ana, California, which is teaching the parents the digital skills for life, but also even leveraging AI to help parents write letters for the teachers and the schools. And I will conclude my my talk by saying that you know, at the end of the day, it's about the success stories. For example, we had a lady by the name of Gloria who basically was hired as a teacher assistant for a Head Start. As soon as she started working, they told her, hey, you need to have digital skills in order for you to get the tablets for the kids so they know how to use it. Gloria went through the training, the 20 hours, was able to gain the confidence and able to sustain her job. And that's what I'm talking about. We need to have that kind of impact in partnerships. Thank you.
Luis, thank you so much. I want to take a quick break here just to remind you that if you're using the guiding notes, this is the perfect opportunity to think about those partnerships, those key takeaways, inspiring ideas, next steps, and also jot down your moonshot ideas. I think there is so much information and so much richness in the stories and projects that are being shared today that I hope you're taking advantage of that. I'm going now to introduce Markevis Gideon, the founder of Nerded Cares in Delaware, and he will be speaking about device refurbishing, pre-apprenticeship, and apprenticeship programs for IT careers. Markevis.
Well, greetings, everybody. Greetings. My name is Markevis Gideon. I am the founding board member of Nerded Cares, which really spawned from my IT company, Nerded Now. You may have recognized we've done some pretty cool things like pitching on Shark Tank and doing a lot of things where people are like, wow, it must be cool. But what people don't realize is that really our goal has always been to really give an impact back into the community. And when we think about doing that, it really started when someone gave me a computer at 12 years old, changed the trajectory of my life, leading me to a vocational high school where I became a Microsoft certified systems engineer at 17, going to college, studying 2 degrees, somehow ending up where I lived in China for 5 years, and then coming back to America to start this business. And really, I always thought, like, how did I get here? It was that one computer. So it's always been my goal to donate over 100 computers back into underserved communities each year. Between 2015 and 2019 through Nerded Cares, we've donated well over 12,000 computers back into underserved communities. In addition to that, we've started a workforce development program, which has been focused on minorities, women, and individuals who are predominantly just not in this industry. I remember going to a panel once, and I was on a diversity panel, and there was 3 other Caucasian men and myself talking about diversity in IT. And I thought it was embarrassing as I look into the audience, and I'm like, okay, well, we're here to talk about digital literacy. We're talking about really inclusion in the tech industry. But I see less than 50 minorities. I see less than 50 women. So that's a lot of reason why we do what we do here at Nerded Cares. Our goal is really to look at 40% women, 80% minority, 90% TANF eligible and or justice involved individuals. This right here is going to make a big impact into the community. And we don't care necessarily wherever you come from, what you look like. No, the goal is to be able to create opportunity. And for us at Nerded Cares, again, we focus on 3 divides. It's really donating technology back into the community. So as I said, we've donated thousands of devices all throughout the nation. We do have a very big focus in the tri-state area, but devices do go across the nation to California. We have devices gone to Africa, like really where we see a need, it's where we're going to go. And then we go ahead and create different programs where we're training individuals to get certified within technology, IT fundamentals, AWS, A+, the same certifications that really helped me. This kid who grew up in an underserved community. His parents didn't graduate from high school, let alone go to college. Like, these are certifications that could change your trajectory. And we pay for all of it. There's no cost to any of our participants. And people are like really thinking like, well, how do you do it? Well, it's all about the partnerships. It's the partnerships that you can make both locally, regionally, nationally. These partnerships got to come together to make a big impact. We can't look at your organization versus my organization. No, we really need to come together and do this together. You realize like if we work together, we can actually make a much bigger impact versus fighting over the same grant dollars. Now, again, I have a for-profit business, and as a certified recycler, yeah, I don't really think about competition. I think about just really building. And I took that same mindset into our nonprofit that we've built. It's only been around for about 5 years, but the impact that we've been able to make has really shined a light onto where we're trying to go. And I'm going to try to really wrap this up when people ask us, so Marquivas, what is the ultimate goal? Like, where's Nerdit now? Nerdit cares. What are y'all trying to do? I stumbled in my first few years. I thought, well, I wanted to put a nonprofit here, a recycling center there, a retail store there, or an ambulance. Well, if you watch our Shark Tank episode, we have an ambulance that go around repairing devices and or donating devices. My wife didn't always like it. For on Christmas Eve, we're going and knocking on doors in the ambulance, donating devices, but that's another story for another day. My ultimate goal is to have a Nerdit presence in every county and every state. When I get there, that's when I know that we really did something, but it's not done because then I got to figure out how we're going to do that nationally. Now, it's not about my name. You see, I'm wearing a sweater. It says managing director. I don't really care about being the CEO. I don't care about that. No, I care about my community. So what I want to do is really make sure that the people that we're training after getting a donated device from us are thinking, well, wow, this is cool. We're closing the digital divide, but that's not where we're stopping. We're going to close the income divide. Take that device, get trained. With the training, get a job. That right there is going to feel good. Now you're bringing some type of resource back into your family. But no, we can't stop there. It's all about the wealth, generating wealth for our communities, communities that have been historically underserved. How do you take a donated computer, get training, get a job, and then come back and say, well, Marquivas, can I have a part of your business? Can I take an ambulance, a kiosk, a recycling center, go into another county and another state and replicate that? Yes, I'm going to help you do that. And the only thing that I ask in return is to continue that turn. Make sure that you're going into another person and offering those same opportunities. That way, you know that we're really making an impact. And at the end of the day, you know that Nerdit cares. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marquez. And if you are taking notes and your moonshot ideas section is not completely full, we have one more speaker. So I hope you're saving a space, or please download another or add notes in a notebook to continue. I am now going to introduce Sky Downing. She is a Programs and Partnerships Director at Community Tech Network in California, and she was going to be speaking about multilingual peer digital navigators. Sky.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Catalina. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. And I want to truly thank the folks at World Education and COABE for having us. It is my extreme pleasure to be here on behalf of Community Tech Network. My name is Sky Downing, she, her pronouns, and I am the Digital Equity Programs and Partnership Director for CTN, as Catalina mentioned. I oversee all of the development, deployment, and maintenance of our capacity building programs and initiatives led by the organization, and I am proud to lead an incredible team of digital equity superheroes who work together to create the culturally inclusive training tools that we'll be talking about today. We call ourselves and the services we provide Digital Lift, and as a part of our capacity building efforts, we offer multilingual curriculum, e-learning opportunities, and regionally appropriate resources, as well as a newly launched free monthly webinar training series on topics which are crucial and relevant to the work that we all do. Next slide, please. Community Tech Network was established as a nonprofit in 2008. Here at CTN, our mission is to transform lives through digital equity. We do so via the provision of direct services or basic digital skills training provided in person, virtually, or in a hybrid learning environment, and through the provision of our Digital Lift capacity building services, which were just mentioned. We have partnered with over 94 agencies nationwide, and since its launch in 2022, Digital Lift has enrolled nearly 300 trainers from 44 of those partner agencies. Next slide, please. Partners are comprised of nonprofit, social service, library, government, education, and corporate entities. And trainers were trained to be inclusive, digital navigators, classroom trainers, and ACP or public benefits enrollment specialists. These partners work in 30 counties nationwide and serve well over 1 million under-resourced or under-recognized community members. Next slide, please. So what is Digital Lift? Digital Lift is professional development for digital equity practitioners. All programs and products have been developed by us at CTN in order to provide you with the knowledge, training, and support needed to develop, implement, and sustain successful digital literacy programming inside of your daily service delivery. Our Digital Lift training toolkit currently consists of 2 primary learning pathways, digital navigation and classroom training, and we offer 5 additional modules focused on program and project management, senior serving agencies, libraries, public benefits enrollment, and our most recent addition, which we are incredibly thrilled about, is a wellness module for healthcare navigators. All trainings are delivered asynchronously online and are developed to produce knowledgeable and confident trainers. We believe that the trainers who are skilled in adult learning principles and trauma healing practices play a critical role in meeting adult learners where they are at and providing effective, culturally inclusive services. That said, we break down another barrier to serving adult learners in underrepresented communities by providing culturally proficient curriculum. We translate to 7 languages in-house that are natively spoken and work with an outside translation house to accommodate any additional language needs on a case-by-case basis with our partner agencies. Next slide, please. So let's take a peek at some of what comprises a culturally inclusive curriculum design. It's important to cover specific apps and websites that are important to the group you are serving. Use examples that are culturally relevant. Be sure that common terminology is translatable and understandable, particularly as it pertains to tech. And come prepared with activities for both your basic and intermediate learners. Next slide, please. It's not just about the curriculum or what's being taught, but who is teaching it and how it's being taught. So this is particularly true in digital literacy. You want your instructor or digital navigator to not only speak the same language, but it's also beneficial if they come from the same community as your learners, as they better know the culture and will have the relatable lived experience necessary to honor the learners in their journey. We've learned in our teaching to stay flexible with lesson plans, be prepared to make adjustments based upon what is happening in the room, and we encourage you to invite your more skilled learners to help their peers and help you as you're training. You may even end up recruiting them to be a part of your team, as we have, in the role of a teacher's assistant or a digital navigator or trainer. Next slide, please. If you want to engage your learners fully from the get-go, be sure to send out a bilingual staff member or volunteer when outreaching to monolingual or English as a second language households. If you don't have the right person on your team to outreach to a specific group, collaborate with a partner who does. Better yet, partner with us. We're here. We have done the digital equity work for over 15 years. We have made the mistakes. We have developed efficient processes and produced a host of multilingual curricular and training tools and resources. We are happy to partner with you to break down the barriers to digital equity inside of your communities and to empower you to provide the sustainable training solutions to those who benefit the most from them. Next slide, please. A culturally inclusive approach to digital inclusion education is not a nice to have, it is a must have. We have a full webinar recorded on culturally inclusive training tools online. And if you scan this barcode here, we invite you to do so. You can view that. And in closing, I would love to share a quote from Dr. Benjamin Danielson that states, "There is no equity without dignity. The bridge between harm and hope is dignity." We are providing services to members of the community who have experienced systemic harm, injustices, and indignities. Our engagement with them is relational. It is not transactional. Though the data is critical to meeting community needs and our understanding of that data is critical, our clients are not numbers. They are humans, and we are invested in their empowerment. Our last slide provides our contact information for you should you have questions outside of today's session that we can answer for you. And I thank you so much again for having us.
Thank you so much. And it's true what they say, that time flies when you're having fun. So thank you, everybody, for sharing. We know that this is barely enough time to share and explore the richness and the many experiences that you can share with this group. So we know that this is just the beginning of a conversation that needs to continue. Before we break, I would like to bring one question to the panelists. And I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes, if possible, so that we can make sure that we finish this webinar on time. So there was also something on the Q&A about partnerships. So let me ask everybody, this question is, what partnerships are or have been critical to the success of your model? And what is one lesson you have learned in getting your partnerships off the ground? And if I can start with Dr. Russell, that'll be fantastic.
I think for us as a tribal college, the one partnership that I think we've really kind of expanded is going to the K-12 schools. Again, it's not easy because we have to deal with 3 different states, but I think that's where we find we can actually drop down, not just at the high school, but at even the elementary level and middle school level. So I think that's what I would look at, is saying, you know, the partnerships that we've built that have been outside of the ordinary. And I think the lesson we learned is that everybody's a potential partner. I think, you know, because when you're in a really rural area like we are, you can't take anybody for granted. So everybody's a potential partner going forward.
Dr. Fanning?
I am going to echo that sentiment. Anybody can be a partner. I think, and I spoke about some of the partners we have at the state agencies. You know, we've also partnered with, you know, national organizations. We work very closely with the Vera Institute. They have been absolutely essential in helping us navigate education in that correctional space and also navigate the digital equity that we are really striving for. But I'm going to say one thing about the lessons that we've learned. You need to be ready to give each other a little bit of grace and make sure that you understand the lens that the other person is bringing to the situation. Because if you can't come to terms with the differences that you have, you're never going to create a good partnership. And I've just been so fortunate to have those partners that are willing to think big and think really not even outside the box. Like the box can't even exist for us right now. So having those people that they're just willing to just kind of link arms with you and move forward, because we all recognize, especially here in Kansas, that what the work that we can do truly does help us live up to our mission of keeping our Kansas communities safe and reducing the number of victims.
Thank you. Luis?
What I'll add in terms of partnerships and best practices, and I mean, collaborations and partnership require trust, and trust, it happens with time, right? And so you have to nurture those dialogues have to happen, because you don't want it to feel transactional, right? And so I would say, one, map out your local ecosystem, right? everybody has a different ecosystem, and which are the actors of your system: libraries, correctional facilities, nonprofits, church, like that varies, but you have to understand what your system is, and then have those concerted effort, those conversations, nurture that relationship, and then go from talking to walking, or talking to paper to walking, meaning you have to, it cannot stay at conversation level. You want action. In order to do that, then you have to formalize the partnership, document, and have some quick wins. So those are, my advice.
Thank you. Marquez.
Yeah, so partnership is everything. A lot of times people look at competition. No, we gotta look at co-opetition. Co-opetition is going to be everything for you. And I think everyone before me really said it well. Anybody can be a partner. It doesn't matter what the industry, it doesn't matter what the sector. Like at the end of the day, we got to find ways to work together. Forget about fighting over the same grant dollars. No, if we work together, more grant dollars will come available, more opportunity will come available, but most importantly, more impact will become available. So at the end of the day, I really implore everyone to be able to make sure that you find ways to partner with your neighbor, partner with people who are distant. I don't care how different you are. No, work together and watch how many more lives you're able to bring together.
Thank you. Sky.
Yes, hi. I also will echo the sentiment of my esteemed peers here, in that we highly value all of our partnerships, every single one of them, from the smallest nonprofit recovering after shutdown that budgeted a year ago for one curriculum to teach in their classroom, to the large scale government contracts such as access to technology in California, or our most recent partnership with the Methodist Healthcare Ministries here in Texas, where we will be enabled to serve 30 partners, provide capacity building training, distribute devices, provide digital skills training, and put 5 digital navigators boots on the ground to serve those partners as well. So it's really, the same as we teach trainers to do this with the clients and the learners, we too meet our partners where they are at, and we are here to establish what your most critical needs are and move forward from there, and do our best to address everything and anything we can in our partnership.
Thank you so much, everybody. I wish we had more time to continue to ask questions. I think, again, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for participating on the panel today. I'm going to pass it now to Sharon to close this webinar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, everybody. It's such a pleasure to listen to these world changers talk about what they're doing and how they're making an impact and how they're partnering. And I'm very excited that we could have so many people join us today. And I know a number of people will be watching after the fact as well. So on behalf of COABE and World Ed and all of the partners that are participating in this initiative, along with Ji Susong and our partners at Office of Ed Tech and World Ed, I just want to say thank you for making time for this. We hope to see you at the COABE conference. I want to encourage you to sign up and register for that pre-conference that's taking place on Sunday in the afternoon, and we hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you again. The next slide is going to give you contact information. So if the message today has been partner, here is how you can contact these change makers and contribute to their work and also build more change in your community. Thank you, everybody, so much for attending today. We'll see you at COABE. Bye.
And Catalina, thank you for organizing this, and Shirley as well.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.